Hey guys, welcome back to the Unleashed podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Rieger, and what an interview I just had with Greg Gerber of Forward from 50. It's forwardfrom50.com. Check him out. If you're older than 50 years old, 50 or older, and you are struggling with your purpose and your meaning and what you're still here for, guys, I'll be 50 in August, so it's like this is not far away from me at all. You got much life left, but I know people, especially after the kids are out of the house, and which is not me. Callan is 7, and so he was actually running around on this interview here behind me as we were doing this because he's out of school right now. But I know as I hear stories of as folks get older, they wonder, what am I here for? What's my purpose? The kids are gone and they're maybe retired, and it's like, what God, what do you want me to do? And Greg just says that there are dreams that are in your heart that you probably have put aside. Maybe you had them early on and you went the practical route and took a job that fed your family and God provided, but now you're like, okay, I'm retired and what's next? And he lives in Arizona. He said many people come there and they have a great time for a while, but then they get bored. It's like, God, what do you want me to do? And he helps people figure that out, find that purpose and that meaning in their life. And it's just such a good interview because it's so in line with this whole unleashed idea of every believer being unleashed to launch and being activated in what God's called them to do. And Greg is doing it. And so I was love this interview. But I know you're going to enjoy it. We had a lot of fun. Greg has an amazing story. He's a journalist, has a journalist background, and now is helping people find their assignment. One of the things that really blessed me that he said is that he helps blow oxygen on that smoldering wick of a dream that people have, and essentially, blowing God's oxygen. Like he's, feels like he's being used by the Lord to help people just give life to those dreams that they've had. And definitely check him out. He's got a podcast and is working on a coaching program. And so I know this interview is gonna bless you. Here it is. Greg, welcome to Unleashed. So good to have
Thank
you.
you. It's nice to be here. Thank you for the
And I love your
invitation.
background, Arizona. It's so beautiful there.
It is. I'm located in the Phoenix area, so it doesn't quite look like this, but the sunsets are
Oh
gorgeous.
my gosh, is that a sunset right there? That
Yes.
Oh, it's so beautiful. For those of you watching audio only, you go to YouTube to watch this so you can see the gorgeous backdrop that he uses. So unless that's your window.
No, I look out on a golf course though, so that's kind of nice.
That's awesome. Do you play golf?
I do not.
Okay,
I don't get
I
anywhere
played a
near
few times
golf
in my
clubs.
life. Love it. Well, Greg, thanks so much for being here. I loved it. It was so
My
fun
pleasure.
getting to meet you through Katie Horner, who was our previous guest just a few weeks ago, and we had an awesome conversation about just everything that you're doing and helping folks that are after 50 years old find their purpose and what God's called them to do. But first, I want to hear about you. So tell me your story.
Okay, very good. I'm a Wisconsin native and I grew up there and have been there most of my life. But in 2009, I lost my job when I was working as a magazine publisher, and my marriage came apart, and everything just sort of happened at once. And I moved to
Oh,
Arizona to start
yeah.
over again.
Mm.
So I came down here and founded a company. I worked as a journalist most of my life, especially professionally. And I founded the first online news organization serving the recreation vehicle industry or the RV industry, motorhomes, travel trailers, and things
Yeah.
like that. I started that down here. It was called RV Daily Report, and I ran that for many years. And
Wow.
kind of a God thing because I didn't sell any advertising for the first 3 years. The people who supported the publication came to me, and that was just a wonderful blessing and kind of a
Mm-mm.
confirmation that I was on the right track with that.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, real quick. So RV, I love that because that's so very niche. Like it
If
was that's probably what made it successful, right? Because there probably weren't any other like you said you were the first one, right?
Well, there were a lot of business to business publications, the magazines, and the ones that I worked for was RV Daily, RV Trade Digest was the first one that I worked for. They
Yeah.
didn't see the internet coming. Talk about an entrepreneurial failure. We would publish a magazine, but it would take 6 weeks from the time that I signed off on it and said that it was ready to go
Wow.
before the magazine appeared in the mailboxes of the subscribers.
Oh my gosh.
So we were publishing news that was well known
Yeah.
before it arrived in the
Mm,
mailboxes of the subscribers. So I approached my bosses and I said, look, it's kind of silly for us to be doing this. How about if we start a website and put the news on the website? And then we can use the features and the other kind of product things for the magazine. And they said, no, no, no. Nobody in your industry has time to be sitting there online reading news. And I'm like, okay, very well. I left that organization and started a different publication
Wow.
right at the heart of the Great Recession back in 2008. But it
Yes.
was kind of doing the same thing, but it had an online component. But
Mm,
because it was 2008, it didn't last long. It only
sure.
was in operation for about 15 to 18 months before the
Uh-huh.
company I'd partnered with had pulled the plug. That
Yeah.
left me in a bad situation, but
Mm,
I believed in the power of online news. So
hmm.
that's why I created RV Daily Report,
Wow.
which was designed to gather all the information I could find that day and assemble it in a newsletter format, send it out to people. So all they had to do was scan the headlines to keep abreast of what was going on in the RV industry.
That's
If there was
awesome.
an article that was interesting to them, they clicked it and they got more information or
Mm,
actual link to the real article that I had found
mm.
that had been published somewhere else. So it was very successful for a number of years.
That's amazing.
And then I
Wow.
decided to uh, get an
Keep going.
RV.
Sorry I derailed
Yeah.
us. That was just very encouraging, very cool to see. Then I could ask a bunch of questions about that. Maybe we will. But all right. So keep going. So you had that
Okay.
RV Daily Report. What happened with
Yes.
that?
So it worked very well. I mean, it was a very popular organization. It was the
Uh-huh.
number one news organ or number one news source in the RV industry for many years.
Wow.
And then I said, well, I really need to get an RV because I could travel the country and interview RV dealers, manufacturers, suppliers, campground owners, and RV owners and report from on the road. And I
Mm,
thought this was going to be the pinnacle of my career. So I got a motorhome and hit the road full time in 2014.
hmm.
So for 3 years, that's what I did is I went
Mm,
to every one of the lower states, 48 states at least once during that 3 year period.
okay.
I was moving really quick as I was traveling around the country.
Wow.
But it exposed me to some very dark secrets about the RV industry.
Mm,
Number one, the product quality was generally very bad. A
mm,
lot of complaints from consumers. I had to stop even identifying myself as a journalist when I got into a campground because people would come to me with complaints about their RVs.
mm.
Then there is problems of getting RVs serviced. And there just was a lack of technicians that were able to do it. And sometimes people had to wait weeks, if not months, to get their RV serviced.
Wow.
And then campgrounds were very crowded. And so people were often fingertip to their neighbor, which just kind of made not as not as fun as the commercials made it look, if you know what I mean, right?
Right?
So I wrote a series of editorials about this that I
Yeah.
called the RV industry death spiral. And I said that if the industry didn't address these problems within 20 years, there wouldn't be any viability left.
Yeah.
Well, that irritated just the right people in the industry.
Uh-huh.
And one of the largest manufacturers and one of the largest retailers started contacting my advertisers and saying, look, if you're going to support Greg, that's fine. That's your choice. But we're not going to put any of your products in our stores or install them in our RVs. So
Wow.
we went from a 250 plus $1,000 a year income to about 90 to 100 within a matter of weeks.
Oh my gosh.
So in
Wow.
2017, I came off the road and I sold the publication
Mm,
to a friend of mine who thought they wanted to take a whack at it,
yeah.
and they kind of limped it along for a while, but it was never successful. So
Mm.
when I met them about 18 months later, they offered to sell it back to me, so
And
that
what'd you say to that?
I said, sure, what the heck? And that's what's an interesting from a faith-based perspective, because in 2017, when I had sold the publication, I did so because I knew God was telling me to go in a different direction, that He wanted me to write about things in other areas.
Mm,
And I
so good.
clearly understood that and clearly felt
Yeah,
that.
how did that? Okay, so let's talk about that for a second. Like, how did you? I know exactly what you mean, but for
Mm-hmm.
somebody maybe they're a newer believer, how did you know? Like, what was there? did you pop open the Bible and read something that instant, like what was it? Because it could happen different ways. Sometimes it's just a knowing. Sometimes it's in prayer. You'll just get a download. Sometimes you'll talk to friends and family and start to bear witness with your heart and like, yeah, that feels like the right way to go. Or sometimes it's a piece or not a piece about a certain. But I'm curious about how the Lord directed you, like
I had a
practically.
whole bunch of ideas on things that I could write about, books, blogs, etc. I really wanted to help people develop their faith and go into producing faith-based content,
Mm-hmm.
but I really couldn't do that as the editor of an RV related publication. I had to
Mm-hmm.
kind of focus on the
Yeah.
recreation vehicle industry. So
Yeah.
I just started getting this check in my spirit that I needed to be moving in a different direction.
Yes.
And so
Yes.
when everything sort of fell apart, I saw that as an open door to,
Yeah.
okay, this is where I need to go.
Yes.
But
That's
it
good.
was so far out of my comfort zone that I was reluctant to do that, if you can imagine.
Yeah.
So for 18 months, I kind of limped along, tried some things, developed a blog at greggerber.com, and
Mhm.
I managed that for a while. And I was just writing about things that was of interest to me. And I was building an audience and having an okay time, but
Yes.
still not making a lot of money. So
Yeah.
when the people that had bought my business offered to sell it back to me, I'm like, okay, what the heck? I'll do that. It's familiar. It's my part of my
Uh-huh.
comfort zone. So I brought
Yeah.
that back and it was almost immediate. And God's like, no, 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 no. I told you I wanted you to go in this direction. And now you're back
Mm,
here in this area that you want to do. So
mm.
which one are you going to follow? My
Ah,
will
that's
or
so good.
yours?
And you could have chosen either one, right? I
Well,
mean,
I chose my will for a while. And then God said, okay, you're on your own then, because my
mm,
hand is off of your business. And there was no fun. There was no joy in it
okay.
anymore.
Yeah.
And it was just a bad experience.
Yeah.
So I decided to blow it up. I mean,
Wow.
literally, I took the entire website and
Uh-huh.
75,000 stories with it
Wow.
offline and it
My
just
goodness.
decided I needed to do something else, but I
Yeah.
wasn't sure what. And that was just a really dark period because that was in 2019 when I blew it up. And we know what happened in 2020.
Hmm.
The
Yep.
COVID isolation
Yes.
came in.
Yes.
And so it was just I living by myself. I was very depressed. I really did not know for sure what my purpose was going to be. It was
Yeah.
just a struggled for a long time on what I was going to do.
Mm.
And and that's where I can get into talking about how Forward from 50 came
Yeah,
about.
let's do it. Let's so
All
yeah,
right.
wow. I mean, we could talk. There's so much from your story that we could unpack. It's amazing.
Thank you.
But that yeah, I mean, just the way you heard the Lord and how you knew that how he gently guided you back and you just knew in your spirit you made a wrong. It's like for you it was a red light, green light. It was a massive red light, and you can keep going through it if you want to. And then it's
Yep,
like God will let us do that, but
exactly.
you
He's like,
knew you weren't on the right track. And so I like to tell people that I don't know, it doesn't have to be hard to hear God's voice, and it doesn't have to be like how I'm talking to you. I've never heard the Lord that way in audible voice. Now I know people that have. I often hear words in my heart, but it's more like a download, just like, or in my mind. But many times for me, it's just a knowing. It's like you said, check in your spirit. Like
mhm,
it just, there's no peace over here. And you can
exactly.
continue to go down that road if you want to. But you know in your heart, like, there's no peace here. I need to turn around and go back. And God is so good to get us back on the right track.
When the student is ready, the teacher appears. And
Yes.
that's what happened to me
Mm,
in 2021
wow.
is
Yeah.
after trying to figure out what to do with my life for a little over a year. I was just super depressed, angry all the time. I had gotten into this habit of doom scrolling news to find out more information about this COVID crap that was going on.
Yeah.
And it just
Yeah.
made me angrier and angrier and darker and
Mm.
isolated. I couldn't go anywhere, do anything. My church stopped meeting, etc.
Yes.
It was
Oh my
just I
gosh.
literally on my own. So it was just
Mm.
poisonous on my soul.
Yeah.
Fortunately, a good friend of mine who runs a mastermind group that I had joined years earlier noticed that there might be a problem and reached out to me and said, uh, you just don't seem a little off. How about
Oh
we have a
wow.
little, can we have a coaching call for like an hour and just
Thank
talk about
God for
things?
that friend.
Exactly. So I bared my soul to this guy as to what I was doing, what I
Mm.
was feeling. His name was Vincent Puglisi. And
Mm-hmm.
he said, eventually, after listening to me whine for a while, he said, Greg, I think a bunch of people over 50, especially men, feel the exact same way that you do.
Mm,
They had a business that they liked that they had to close, or they had a job that they loved where they were wrapped up in their identity and they lost that job and they're struggling with identifying purpose for their lives.
mm.
I said, yeah, I agree with that.
Wow.
He said, what if you could develop something to help men and women develop more purpose or having more meaningful lives? I said, well, funny you should mention that because several years ago, I had reserved a domain thinking it might be a good book title called Forward from 50. And he said, oh, I like that name. And he said, maybe you could tell people how they can move their lives forward from 50. And the more I thought about that, the more I thought this might be a good idea. So I made a
Yes.
post on Facebook. I said, I'm thinking of starting this business called Forward from 50. Who has a fun story about how their lives have gone in a different direction after turning 50? 20
Mm-hmm.
people stepped forward and said, I want to be interviewed. Talk about a confirmation that you were on the right track. That was pretty impressive.
That's incredible. I love that you did a Facebook post because so many people be like, okay, I'm doing this business. I'm going to buy a website. I'm going to spend thousands of dollars on this. I'm going to do all of these things and then hope people come. And you did it the exact, and it's what Vincent's probably told you how to do this. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe you just already knew, but just let's figure out the market first. So you put a Facebook, that's brilliant because now you're, you're going forward with the knowledge from your ideal audience and
Right.
then you're not spending any money in advance. That's so cool.
Yep. It looks like a lot of people I found are in the same situation I am.
Mm,
I live in Sun City, Arizona, which is Northwest Phoenix. Sun City is America's first planned retirement community. It
mm,
was developed in 1960, the year that I was born.
okay.
There are about 50 to 60,000 people here, but there's 8 recreation centers and 8 golf courses in this community. So people flock to Sun City thinking that they are going to retire, kick back, just take it easy for a long time. They're done with working and they're just going to enjoy life. And that lasts for about 6 months. And once the purpose is removed from their life, then the joy is gone as well.
Mm,
And then they
mm,
find themselves falling in the same trap that I did, right?
yes.
Without purpose, the next thing they're doing is they're doom scrolling through news sites or social media posts, and it's just making them angrier, hopeless, frustrated, etc.
Mm,
And we've just people need this kind of purpose. They need that meaning in their life in order
yes.
to be successful.
Wow. So how did it go from so Facebook post and then what happened?
Well, then I interviewed these 20 people and I published their stories, and people were receiving them. They were like inspired by the things that I were
Wow.
writing. So I continued doing it.
That's
And it
awesome.
is, yes. Now I have not yet made a lot of money off of Forward from 50 yet.
Okay.
Yeah, it is because God has provided the
Yes.
other money to do this.
But you
One of the
know you're doing what he's called you to do. And so you know
absolutely
the provision's going to come, even through forward from 50 or whatever else he brings across your path. That's so cool.
exactly. Yep. God always funds his assignments. And there is a
Wow.
no doubt that this was a God assignment.
Mm, mm. I'm just taking that notes right. God always funds his assignments. That's so good.
Hmm.
True.
One of the
Okay, so you
first
interviewed
people,
those. Was that in a blog format that you posted
it
those?
uh, both. What I like to do is interview people and then record the interview and then
Okay,
turn the interview into a podcast. So
wonderful.
the podcast is a way for people to tell their stories their way and in their own words,
That's
and they
awesome.
just share it. Then after I post that, I write a feature story, kind of an
Okay.
abbreviated feature story based on the interview, and
Uh-huh.
make it a little shorter and post
Yeah.
that as well. So people
Wow.
now have a choice of reading their story or
Yeah.
listening to the person tell their story.
That's so good. Okay, so just technical stuff. So the podcast obviously goes to Apple and Spotify. You probably have a
Mm-hmm.
podcast hosting service. What do you do with the text? Does that go like on a blog on forwardfrom50.com or what do you do
Yes.
with that
Yep.
text? Okay. All
When
right.
I'm doing the feature story, yes, I publish that on Forward from 50.
Got it. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome. Because
It
then you've
is
got SEO hitting that too. That's so
working to our
good.
advantage. Correct. Exactly.
Absolutely.
Hmm.
That's so good. Do you have AI help you with, I mean, you're a journalist, so you may be against it, some of the AI in the writing because you don't need help with writing like I do.
It's so funny that you'd mention that because I despised AI
Yeah.
for a long time.
Uh-huh.
I could tell immediately that something had been written by AI and
Yes.
rather than by a human.
Yeah.
And I was interviewing a woman for Forward from 50 last year, and she said, "Have you ever trained AI to write like you do?" I'm like, "How do you do that?" So, do you have a blog? Yeah. We'll send the link to the blog to AI and said, review these stories and then write one that's based that sounds like what I do. I said, "Oh, come on. It can't be that or that easy." That's exactly what I did. I uploaded a link to Chat GPT
Yeah.
and uploaded a transcript of an interview. And I said, "Please write a feature story that sounds like the things that I post over here."
That's
And I'm just watching it. And all of a sudden, it starts writing it. I'm like, "Oh, come on. It can't be this simple." And I'm reading it. And it's like, dang, this is pretty good. I just had to make a couple more tweaks. And
yes.
it does a good job at
Yeah.
kind of summarizing interviews that are very
Yes.
good. And I still have to go in there and make it sound like me because
Yeah.
it is a computer, but
Right.
it has made the job easier to
That's awesome. Okay,
utilize.
let's talk about that just for a minute, quick minute, because
Hmm.
you being a journalist, you obviously are a good writer. You don't have a problem coming up with words.
Right.
What's just your whole theory? And I mean, obviously, also being a believer, there's a lot of Christians are like, "Oh, AI is of the devil," and I'm more of like, you know what? It's probably. I know there were people because I'm old enough to remember when the internet came out. People are like, "Oh, the internet's awful and it's going to be of the devil." And yes, there's some bad things on the internet for sure. There's a lot of
Absolutely.
great things on. I make my living because the internet is around. So it's not all bad. But what is your thoughts on AI overall and just being a journalist and should people use it? Should they not? How do you look at that?
It's still, I guess my feeling is being under development on
Yeah,
that.
sure.
I am more open to utilizing it as a tool,
Uh-huh.
but I really don't think people can just use AI to create their own voice. You know what
Yeah.
I mean?
Yeah.
If they go write me a story about sump pumps, whatever the case might be, and it
Right.
writes up and it will pull up an information and it'll look at it and sound like, okay, that's good, and they'll
Yeah.
post it out there. But it has a problem in putting humanness into
Yes.
the writing at this
Yeah.
point and emotion.
Yeah.
And that's one thing that I found with Forward from 50 because I had a blog since 2014, and I'm sorry, a podcast since 2014, where I
Okay.
was interviewing people in the RV industry. And
Yeah.
those interviews would typically go 20 minutes, 25 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I started interviewing people about things they were passionate about and more
Mm-hmm.
purposeful, the things that gave their life meaning, those interviews would easily go to 45 minutes to an hour.
Wow. Yeah.
And just when people get excited, they're talking about that,
Yes.
what fires them up. It's just, I don't want to break that because
Yes.
that the passion comes through in their voice and their animation. And
Yeah.
just, I want to capture that.
Absolutely. Tell me some of the story. What are some of the people, without, I mean, I guess you have a podcast, so you're probably okay sharing some names, but tell me some of the people that you're interviewing. What are their stories and just what are those things that you're capturing?
One of the ones that I really found to be useful personally was an interview with Phyllis Jenkins. She is a woman in the
She,
Dallas area.
yeah, she's been on my podcast.
Has she
She's
really?
when it was called Streams of Income. I met
Okay.
her through, I don't even know how I met her, but um, oh my gosh, yeah, she was on yeah, African American lady.
Yes.
Yes,
Hmm.
yeah, she
That's
was
right.
okay. Great, tell me her story because I just it's been a while since we've chatted.
So I was talking to her, and she had a near death experience and was in the hospital in critical condition. And the
Mm,
woman next to her in the hospital actually passed away from the same thing that she had. But
mm,
Phyllis recovered. And she's like, why? Why did I
mm.
recover? And God told her, because I have an assignment for you. And
Yes,
he told her to develop this powerful women's network to
yes.
encourage and
Mm.
empower women to share their stories and to take their story to the stage rather than the grave.
Yes, I remember this.
Do
Okay.
you remember this
Yeah,
now?
yeah, yeah. I remember that. I forgot about the near death experience, but I remember
Mhm.
her business was all, our ministry is all about helping people tell their story. Mm,
Exactly.
so
And
good.
so she was the one who told me that you have a God assignment.
Yes.
And that's what I thought, that's exactly right. That's what
Yeah.
Forward from 50 is. It is an assignment by God to tell other people's stories in hopes of encouraging others to realize that they still have something to accomplish in their own life.
Yeah. Okay.
So,
So I'm pretty close to this age. I'll be 50 in August. Um, but just talk to me like if I was almost like you advising me like how do I so let's I mean I have a 7-year-old. You probably saw him running through here because he's on spring break. And so I'm in a different stage of life than probably the other people that you talk to. But pretend I'm a little bit older and have grandkids, and all the kids
mhm,
are out of the house, and I'm like, okay, I'm retired. How do you walk somebody through figuring out what God has for them? Because I'm still alive, so I still
mhm.
have a purpose. I believe that if I'm still here, He's got me here for a reason. So how do I discover that?
My guess is that you knew early on in your life what you were called to do.
Mm,
There is something that you wanted to do. You dreamed
yeah.
about doing it,
Mm,
and you just felt called in that direction. In fact, you may have
yes.
realized that you have skill, talent, and ability in that area that
Uh-huh.
other people do not.
Yes.
What you do is easy for you, and other people say,
Yes.
oh my gosh, it's just horrible. For me,
Mhm.
that was writing, but I
Yeah.
had no idea what I was going to do as a writer. And there were very few opportunities for writers when I was in the 1970s, when I was getting out of high school.
Hmm.
There's journalists, of course, and
Sure.
that's what they were doing. And people could become authors, and there were people who were very successful at it, but I didn't have the confidence to do that yet.
Yeah.
So I decided to go into restaurant management and then
Uh-huh.
law enforcement and a bunch of other things. But that passion never really left
Yeah.
until
Wow.
I was still in my 40s when I really got into it. I got my first job as the editor of RV Trade Digest when
Hmm.
I was 40.
Yeah.
And
When
that
you got
was
that job, did you feel like, oh yeah, now I'm actually in my element? Like I'm actually doing, uh, using my gift? Did it feel that way?
It did, as a
Yeah.
matter of fact. In
That's
fact, it
good.
was a God thing because I had no experience in magazines.
Mm.
So when I went to interview for that, that's one of the things that the vice president of the company told me. He says,
Yeah.
you're a talented writer. The examples show that you do that, but we just don't know whether you can manage a magazine. And I'm like, I
Yeah.
don't know what the difference between a magazine and a newspaper is because I edited my Air Force Base newspaper for
Hmm.
3 years and made it the second best in the Tactical Air Command. So I'm pretty sure that I can do that. And he's like, well, we'll think about it and come back. And I said, okay, well, very good. Thank you for that time. I went and discovered that there was an RV show in Rockford, Illinois that weekend.
Okay.
So I went to Rockford, got into the show, and went around and talked to each of the dealers
Uh-huh.
and asked them, what are the critical issues facing the RV industry today? Surprise, it was the things that I discovered years earlier. But I
Mm.
made a list of all the things they told me. And then I created an editorial plan for 6 months of what I would
Awesome.
want to write about in all of these issues. And
Yes.
in my thank you note to the company for interviewing me, I said, here's an editorial plan for you. And that was enough.
That's
I got a
awesome. Oh
I
my
got a
goodness. That's
call
so
from
cool.
the
That's so
publisher
cool.
of RV Trade
That's
Digest at that
amazing.
point, and he said, "This is great." He talked to me for about 15
Wow.
minutes, and he said, "We'd like to invite you or offer you the job. Can you start next Monday? Because we
Wow.
have a big trade show." So my first day on the job was to board that airplane and fly to Las Vegas to represent this publication as the editor in chief. And I
That's
didn't know the difference between a
amazing.
motorhome and a travel trailer. I called them drivables and pullables. It's just,
I
but the
love it.
industry was very gracious to me
Oh my
in helping
gosh.
to get me up to speed.
That's so good. Okay,
Mhm.
you're doing with Forward from 50, one of the things you want to do is coaching and have a membership program, right?
Correct.
So tell me like just I love what you said that I probably, if I was that guy who's struggling to figure out what I'm supposed to be doing, that there was probably some dreams in my heart that have been there all along. How do you help
That's right.
people discover? Like, do you ask, are there like some of the things I ask is, um, go find friends and family, people that know you, and ask them, what do you see about me? What do you see me as good at? Or I just let it hear. I mean,
That
I
would be
have
it.
some things I would probably ask these guys, but what from your point of view to get somebody thinking about that dream that's on their heart, what questions do you ask? What
Sure.
process do you take them through to help discover that again?
I believe in my heart that everyone has a natural talent, that it's
Hmm.
something that they are given at birth that they do so well that other
Yeah.
people struggle with. Like I said, for me, it's writing. You
Yeah.
said you're not a typically a proficient
I
writer,
do
but I
okay.
can,
Yeah.
yeah,
It's just, but it's not my
exactly.
gift.
It's not your gift.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Correct.
So for me, I knew that that was my gift.
Yeah. How
And
early
so
did
I
you
would
find out about that? Like when?
technically I learned when I was in 11th grade because
Okay.
my 11th grade English teacher saw something in me that I
Yeah.
did not know existed.
Oh,
I
wow.
could not write at that point.
Okay.
And so his name was Keith Larson, and he
Wow.
was my teacher. He met with me every week for 1 hour during his free period.
Okay.
And he would drill me on grammar and
Mm,
things like that until I mastered that. And once I mastered that, he said, "All right, now we're going to make you a writer." And he
mm.
introduced me to a thesaurus and taught me how to be more creative in my writing. And I
Okay.
just fell in love with words at that point.
Got it. Okay. So that
But
was like a very pivot. I was a very pivotal
yes,
time in your life, and you knew you can look back to that. So do you feel
I
like
can,
everybody has something like that or similar, or
I
a
do.
a theme of the highlights in their life that they could look back at? Yeah, that's my thing because of this and this and this.
I believe that. I believe that you
Yeah.
know in your heart that that's what you should be doing or that you really want to do it. It's what fires you up. But well meaning friends and relatives tell you, Greg, you can't make money as a writer. So you have
Yes.
to do something more practical.
Yeah.
So you bury the thing that you know you're good at, that you feel
Mm,
called to do, to go do things that might bring in money and make a
mm.
living for you, that are
Yes.
practical for raising a family,
That's
etc.
so
And
good.
it works. But I see a lot of people, especially when they get to around age 40, when the kids are gone, the house is empty, the empty nest, they start thinking there has got to be more to life than what I'm living right now.
Mm,
And
mm.
so at that point, they start looking about ways to bring more meaning into their life.
Yes.
So
Oh my
then
gosh.
that's when I would say, what was it back when you were a child or a teenager that you thought you were wanting to do?
Yeah.
And then we start looking at ways that they might be able to do that today.
Yes.
Not, for example, kids say, I want to be an astronaut. Well, at 50, you're way too old to be an astronaut, right?
Right, right,
But
right.
if you love space and things like that, you can teach kids
Yes.
how to fall in love with space as well. You can
Absolutely.
teach them how to read a star chart. You can teach
Mhm.
them, bring out a telescope and have them look through that to see constellations and galaxies and things like
Mhm.
that.
Mhm.
That just fires you up because that's what
Yes.
you're interested in and you're sharing that love and
Absolutely.
passion with others and it's firing them up and
Yes.
everybody wins.
Yes.
So
And that can
that's the
also
kind of thing.
bring in income too.
It can, right?
Oh my gosh.
Yes. Yeah, we
That's
say
so
that all the
awesome.
time. Any hobby can really be a passion as well.
Absolutely.
So if you really find joy in fishing, for example, that is your hobby. You love to go out
Mhm.
in the boat and just drop the line, and it just
Yeah.
excites you to get that fish on and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So you turn that,
My
but
gosh.
it's not really a passion because you're not helping other people. So it's kind of a wasted gift. But if you
Mm.
invite somebody else onto the boat to talk to them about the equipment they need, this bait catches the kind of fish, uh, how to do all of that and put it together, that's when the hobby becomes a passion.
Mm. That's so good. Talk about, okay,
Thank
so
you.
you a passion to I've never heard it put this way. So a passion to you is when I bring you along and now I'm pouring into you.
Exactly. Right.
Mm.
Yep. So another example I use is gardening. My grandmother loved to garden. She loved to
Yeah.
plant things. She loved to nurture them. She loved to grow. You'd go by her house and there was a big field full of flowers and other plants, and she grew her own vegetables and things like that.
Uh-huh.
So if my grandmother had shared that information with other people who wanted to learn how to plant things, like I'll kill a plant in 3 weeks. I guarantee it. Right. But if I were to go to her and she was to show me how to do this and how to
Uh-huh.
care for it and what to use, why to weed, where to weed, what to use
Uh-huh.
when you're weeding and all of that, then that becomes her passion
Mm.
and it's instructing me. So I think
Wow.
there's something that we do so good that we should be teaching other people how to do it as well.
God. So you're saying if you're just enjoying it yourself, it's more of a hobby, but once you start imparting that to others, it becomes a passion.
Correct.
That's awesome. Wow. It's like saying that you can't have passion unless there's other people involved. Passion with me. Wow, that's so good.
That's what I think.
Man.
Other people will disagree with me and they say,
Yeah.
I'm not doing any of that kind of stuff and I still living a very purposeful life.
Yeah.
And they may very well be, but
Yeah.
I think for other people, a passion or purpose always involves serving others in some
Well, I mean, that's
capacity.
how we're wired and that's how God made us. I
That's
mean, wow. Oh my gosh.
exactly right. Because I think we
Mm,
all have that natural talent. Throughout the course of our lives, we are always learning new skills, right? Whatever
mm.
it is, we're taking classes, we've got jobs, etc. Then
Yeah.
we have a bunch of unique life experiences that we've had that make us different from everybody else on the planet. So we've got
Hmm.
our natural talent, our learned skills, our unique life experiences. And when you're 50, 60, that is exactly the time it all comes together. And that's where legacy is developed at that point,
Yes.
where
Oh
you
my
can start
gosh.
pouring back into the lives of other
Yes.
people
Yes.
the things that you've learned.
Okay, let me ask you this. So, there's a guy named Lance Wallnau who's local here. He has a whole ministry. He talks about he learned from a guy named Professor Bobby Clinton out of Fuller Seminary in California, and he talks about convergence. And
Precisely.
I'd be curious to your thoughts on that because it's basically I feel like Greg that that's the stage I'm entering. I'm about to be
Mhm.
50 years old, and Lance says it's typically around 50 to
50.
60 years old that a person enters this area where all of the gifts, the talents, all the experience of their life culminates into this season and they're using all of those things for a greater purpose. What's your
Exactly.
take on all that?
I could not agree more
Wow.
because God did not give us those skills, talents, and abilities and experiences so that we could spend our days on the pickleball court.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And just or on the golf course.
Yes.
Well, it just they
Mm.
got to be utilized some way because
Yeah.
that's what you were created to do. God
Yeah.
created you for a specific person. That's why with Forward from 50, I approach this from a faith-based perspective
Yeah.
that God does exist and
Yeah.
God did create you and he gave you these things
Mm.
for that purpose. So your job then is to identify ways to utilize those skills, talents, and experiences to help other people and advance his
That's
kingdom.
so awesome. Man, I'm so excited about what you're doing because it's right in
Thank
line with
you.
what's on my heart.
Mm-hmm.
Um, oh my gosh.
Yeah. You got a ways to go though before you have an empty nest.
That's right, I do. Yes.
Your little
He's
bird
right
is,
here. And like
yeah.
normally I do these podcast interviews, he's at school, but right now, like he's just in my office and you know what, even most people be like, oh, you got to edit all that out. And with, especially with streams of income, I never did. He might
Mm-hmm.
come in and be like, Daddy, really loud. And my audience, I felt like was to dads who want to be home with their families. And so the fact
Precisely.
that he walks in is like just proof of this is the way life is for me right now. And I love it. I mean, it can be
That's exactly right.
distracting, but
Mm-hmm.
let me ask you, okay, so pretend like you're Greg Gerber is now you're 20 years old and it's 2025 with the tools we have, and you know your skill is writing. Um, do you what would you advise that young man as far as to not listen to the family and friends that say, Greg, you can't make money from writing. You need to go get a job, be practical. So what would your message be to that guy with his
I,
gift?
Yeah, I would say don't give up on that idea because communication is going to be essential. With computers doing most of the writing now, it is going to need, companies are going to need people who can put
Yes.
passion into their writing and purpose
Hmm.
and really just the emotion into it. So
Yes.
continue to develop those skills and look for opportunities to do that. Start a blog of your own and
Yes.
start developing your own following. And it's so easy
Yeah.
today for people to start
Yes.
a blog and
Yeah.
have their own uh, group of followers. In fact, there's a
Absolutely.
great book, or not book, but a pamphlet that was written about 1,000 fans. Have you ever heard of that?
Oh, there's Pat Flynn wrote a book about called Super Fans, or
Okay.
it's about having just you just only need like 100, like 1,000 people on an email list and 100 people that are paying you, and you got a tremendous business.
Exactly. That's right. Even if you do it on the side, you're still utilizing your skill, talent, ability, your
Yes.
passion to convey information to other
Hmm.
people. So writing is not dead. In fact, I think it will
Absolutely
be
not.
more important going forward to have that kind of ability to interview people
Yes.
and draw stories out of them. Computers can't do that yet.
No.
They are good at writing. So I'm finding that I can interview people and upload the transcript, and it can help me write a story faster, which is okay. I don't see that utilizing AI as a tool. I don't think that's bad. But
Right.
you're never going to say, ask the questions to this guy and then write a story about his life, because the
Mm.
computer is just not capable yet of being
Yeah.
able to do that. And I don't see it ever will be, because it's a
Yeah.
machine, it's not a human.
Right. Oh my gosh. Greg, I feel like I could just chat with you for hours. You need to come back because this is just right in line with my heart and it's what I feel called to do. So obviously it's just fun chatting with you and hearing about what God's put on your heart to do. How can people find you?
www.forwardfrom50.com.
Okay. What else would you want to say to, I mean, you got the stage. What else? What's your parting thoughts?
My parting thought is, don't give up,
Mm,
because you have that purpose. You know in your heart what you're called to do. You
yeah.
sense it. You've sensed it
Yeah.
for a long time. So it's time to take that initial step of faith
Mm,
and get it done. And if you don't understand how to do that, call a trusted friend who can guide you in that direction or provide you
yes.
with the encouragement to blow oxygen on that smoldering wick of a dream, if you know what I mean.
Oh,
You know, God says he will not give up on a broken reed or a smoldering wick, and neither should you, you know.
where's that verse?
I'll have to send that to you. I can't
I'll
remember.
Google it.
Okay.
But I love what you just said. Blow oxygen on that smoldering
Wick of a
wick,
dream.
wick of
Yes.
a dream. Oh my goodness, that's good.
Yep. And then look for ways to
Love it.
utilize what you're passionate about.
Mm,
There's need all over the place. And
yes.
if you're having a problem with that, I'm happy to have a
So
brainstorming
good.
session with anybody
So
to
good.
talk about what some of the things they might do that they
Yeah.
would that would give their life more joy and meaning.
Absolutely. Okay, one more question, maybe.
Sure.
So you put that Facebook post out, which was brilliant when you were starting Forward from 50. I often also just tell people um, like who do you feel called to serve? Who's that person that you're
Yes.
burdened for? Just go find those people and just start having conversations because then it will
That's
become clear how you can serve them. And you don't
that's
even
right.
have to worry about is it a blog? Is it a podcast? Is it YouTube? Do I have a mentoring program? Do I have coaching? You can get so overwhelmed with that so quickly.
Oh, no kidding.
Don't even worry about any of that because then you'll never start because you'll feel overwhelmed. Just
Right.
go find the people that you feel called to serve, have conversations with them, and you'll probably be fired up after those conversations, and you'll fire them up, which what you were just talking about with the fishing, how you get fired up when you're teaching somebody else, and now they're fired up fishing, and now you just feel like, wow, this is awesome. I'm in my purpose. I'm doing something I love. And then it'll become clear how you can create a business or a ministry around that.
Exactly. God will put people in your life to
Yeah.
usher you in the direction that you need
So
to
good.
go. He
Wow.
will, like I said, when the student
Mm,
is ready, the teacher will appear.
mm,
And so there will be people out there who say, "You're so good at this. You know, I
yes.
wish I could do what you have or you do or whatever. Or what
Mhm.
would you do if you were me, because I can't
Yeah.
do what you do," that kind of thing. And that
That's
will open the
awesome.
opportunity for you to serve other people.
Mm, I
And it
love it.
doesn't have to be a big online ministry or anything like that. It
Sure.
can just
Oh,
be serving the people in your neighborhood.
absolutely.
And there's
Yeah.
no age limit either. There is
Yes.
always something you can do to serve other people,
Mm,
regardless of your
mm,
age.
mm.
I read a story once, a couple of years ago, right when I was starting Forward from 50, about a woman who was handicapped. So she was in a wheelchair
Mhm,
and she
mhm.
didn't know what her purpose was, right?
Yeah.
And she would go to the grocery store and she knew the people by name. And she would
Mhm.
stop in the aisle and she would talk to the grocery clerk who was having a problem with a child or whose child was sick, et cetera. And he would
Mhm.
offer a prayer to that individual. Then they go down the another aisle and they'd encounter
Yeah.
somebody else who was celebrating the birth of a child, and they were talking about that and
Uh-huh.
celebrating that. And it just, when she left that store, there were a half dozen people who were fired up and feeling good about themselves. And all
Wow.
she did was go and buy groceries.
That's awesome.
Thank you.
That's amazing. Oh my gosh, Greg, this is amazing. Thank you so much for being on. Keep me posted on what you're doing. I want to
I
stay in
will.
touch and let me know how I can help you for sure.
That's a deal. Thank you very
Awesome.
much for inviting me
Oh,
on. It
of
was
course.
fun.
God bless.